You know, often I must mourn the marriage I think I should have in order to embrace the marriage God says I could have. One of the biggest challenges in marriage, I've been married 17 years, is that I'm often so busy trying to change my spouse, manipulate my spouse, cleverly of course, control my spouse, turn them into the person God would have them that they should be, that they feel resented by it, my wife feels parented by me, or I feel parented by her. And this is one of the counterintuitive principles Jesus gives to us. He says the way to embrace what God says you could have in marriage is to first mourn what you think you should have. And there is a mourning process. There are things about your marriage that you thought you could have or should have that you must mourn in order to embrace and begin to love your husband and love your wife the way God would have you. Because what happens is when we're so trying to push somebody else, another human being, to what they should do, we're operating out of fear. Fear we're never going to have the marriage we should, fear that he's not going to be what he ought to be, fear that she's not going to be what she should be. And we're motivated by fear and anxiety and guilt of what should happen. And we bring the worst possible thing into marriage, expectations. Because when you're operating with the shoulds, it's all about expectations. And you don't have the freedom to love. You don't have the freedom to really learn to meet each other's needs. In fact, sometimes I'm so busy parenting or feeling parented that I resent it, and my wife resents it. We've gone through those journeys in our marriage, and all of us have. About a month ago, my wife and I had a fight. It went something like this. "You always assume the worst of me," she said. "You always assume I'm criticizing you when I'm not." I had enough state of mind to pause, walk away, finish getting ready for bed, and try and think about what is it that just happened? Why did I act so defensively? Why was I so upset? Why was I so bothered? It wasn't that big a deal. I mean, after all, I was just putting a box of Christmas lights away. How did this turn into a marriage conflict? She pulled the covers up. I finally dared to speak. I said, "Honey, I think I know what happened. I am so sorry. You're right. When I get defensive, when I feel disrespected, I don't remember that your heart is for me. I do assume the worst. And I know your heart is for me. I know you love me. I know you care for me. But when I was taking the box of Christmas decorations down the steps and you said, 'Oh, you don't forget to,' I thought, how incompetent am I as a man that I can't even handle a box going down the stairs to put it away?" She said, "I wasn't trying to criticize you. I wasn't trying to control you. I just stuttered because I was trying to get the words to say, 'There's fragile glass in the first box, be careful.'" And what I realized is, as a man, when I feel disrespected, something happens internally in me. Something happens where I begin to get more defensive than I typically am. I begin to assume the worst. I begin to all of a sudden begin to protect my vulnerable spots. I begin to think and forget that my wife's heart is for me. And then, if you're like me, in most of our marriages, we reach into the toolbox we have in marriage, and we've got the same basic 5 tools. It's the same tools we've been using for the last 10 years, last 20 years. They haven't worked. It's the, here's what you should do, here's what you ought to do. It's the manipulate, it's the parent toolbox. But there comes a time when you're going to mourn all these tools. Because some of these tools worked for a little bit, but they brought you to a brick wall where your marriage is not what you want it to be. And you're going to have to mourn these tools that you used to use in order to switch to some new tools, to understand how to move in a new direction, to embrace what God has for you, to mourn the marriage you should have in order to embrace the marriage God says you could have. And one of those tools I want to try and unpack for you today, or unlock for you today, is one of the mysteries of the male mind. And we won't get it all solved here for sure, but we're going to try and at least take a picture, a snapshot of what goes on inside of a male mind. We're going to look at the mystery first, then we're going to unlock it, and then I'm going to give you 2 keys. So we'll look at the mystery, then we're going to unlock it, and then we'll look at 2 keys. So let's start with the mystery. What is the mystery of the male mind? Well, why is it that men seem to be so confident? We seem to be so in control, and yet you get any women together and they'll say, "Men have such a fragile ego. How can they seem so confident and yet have such a fragile ego? How can he allow himself to be teased by coworkers and he's fine? But I tease him a little bit and he suddenly gets defensive. Why is that? What's going on there? Why do men get together and they just laugh hysterically at jokes about women nagging their husbands? It doesn't seem that funny to me. In fact, it seems sort of a double standard in there. Well, we got to start with some degree of humility that there's some aspect of how God made men and women that we're never going to fully understand each other. But today I want to unlock some of the aspects that God has revealed to us what goes on inside of a male mind. I read a joke recently about things that only women understand. I read this list and I don't understand half of them, but maybe you will. 10 things that only women understand. Number 10, why it's good to have 5 pairs of black shoes. 10 things only women understand. The difference between cream, ivory, and off-white. Number 8, that crying can be fun. You know, I have never had 2 guys get together and say, I just had a good cry last night. Never heard it. Number 7, 10 things only women understand. Fat clothes. Number 6, a salad, a diet drink, and a hot fudge sundae make a balanced lunch. Number 5, discovering a designer dress on a clearance rack can be considered a peak life experience. The inaccuracy of every bathroom scale ever made. Number 3, that a good man can be hard to find, but a good hairdresser is next to impossible. Number 2, why a phone call between 2 women never lasts under 10 minutes. And the number 1 thing that only women can understand is often other women. Because God has made us so different. And because of that, we get together and we talk to other women and say, help me understand my husband. But we're talking to people who already understand what we understand, but don't understand what they understand. So this is the mystery. What's going on inside of the male mind? So let's try and unlock it. Why does he seem so secure, but act so insecure? And here it is. Here's the unlock. Every man wants to be Superman, but every wife holds a lead box. Every man wants to be Superman. He wants to be your hero. He wants to be your strength. He wants to be your provider. He wants to be the one that's cheered on and looked up to. But every wife holds a lead box. And that man can't see inside that lead box. And what opens up that lead box, it might be the kryptonite of critique that brings him to his knees. Or what might happen when that box gets opened is it may cheer him on. It may fill up that desire he wants to be your hero and to be your Superman. But see, guys are constantly being sized up at work, at home, and family. We're constantly being sized up. And part of being sized up is you got to protect your vulnerable spot. You don't want people to even know you have a vulnerable spot. Superman doesn't want Lex Luthor to know that kryptonite exists. You don't want other people to expose your vulnerabilities. You don't want people even to know you have vulnerabilities. And to the untrained eye, you see Superman. You see his cape. You see his big S. And you say, that guy is way too high. I got to bring him down a couple notches. When the opposite is true. He wants to be cheered on. He best fulfills his destiny. He best fulfills the purpose God made for him when he is cheered on, when he is respected, when he is affirmed. But he's got a vulnerability. And unlike the coworkers, and unlike his friends, a wife has a lead box. And in that lead box is more power over his psyche and more power over his self-appearance, more power over how he sees himself than anyone else. See, you have been given a treasure. You have a power in that lead box that he hasn't entrusted to anyone else. And you also see him day in and day out. You see him as Clark Kent. You see, at work he can be Superman to everybody, but at home you see him as Clark Kent. You see his vulnerabilities. You see his mistakes. You see his shortcomings. And in a world where he's constantly trying to protect his vulnerabilities and portray himself as Superman, when those weaknesses get exposed, all of a sudden he gets very defensive because he doesn't want anyone to know about the lead box. He doesn't want anyone to know about the kryptonite. And that's the power you hold in him. In fact, they did a national survey with men, and they asked, regardless of how successful you are in your current job, which of these statements best describes you? Number 1, I try to perform well and look as competent as possible. When inside, I sometimes feel insecure and am concerned about others' opinions of me and my abilities. So here's a guy who looks secure, but says inside, I really feel insecure. I feel vulnerable. Of all the nationwide surveys, 71% of men said that's me. 25% said, no, I always feel secure in my abilities, and I rarely consider what others think of me. So it says that 3/4 of us were willing to be honest in an interview and say, yeah, I'm vulnerable, but I don't want people to know about it. Well, the reason that is so secure, it's so interesting, is because if your husband was sitting next to you right now and you said, "Is that true of you?" 100% of us guys would answer, "No, no, no, I'm part of the 25%. So even though 70% of us say we feel that way, 100% of us would say, "Oh, I'm not part of that group." Why? Because you're asking me to expose my vulnerabilities about my vulnerabilities. You see this all the time. You see it at work. Men feel vulnerable. We feel vulnerable all the time. Frank McGuire, who started Federal Express, and he worked in the Kennedy White House. Here's a guy who is a man's man, a leader's leader. He's accomplished great things. He's trusted by the president himself. And yet every day on his way from work, he'd head out. And the other co-founder, Fred, he'd turn to Fred and say, "Hey, Fred, have a great day." And Fred would always say, "Thanks for going the extra mile. Thanks, Frank, thanks for going the extra mile." Except one particular day. One particular day, he was on his way out, and Frank turned to Fred and said, "Hey, see you next week." Silence. And all of a sudden, Fred, as he was leaving the door, said, "Oh, by the way, I want to see you in my office first thing Monday." Well, here's a guy who's successful. Here's a guy who co-founded one of the fastest growing successful businesses. Here's one of his friends, but his boss. He's been a confidant to the president, and in that moment, he suddenly felt insecure. He said that entire weekend, he was miserable, his wife was miserable, his kids were miserable, even Thor the Wonder Dog was miserable. What does my boss want to talk to me about? What did he find out? Did he find out I'm an imposter? Did he find out something that I didn't really do as good as I said I did? He started thinking what it could be, and all weekend he's fretting over it. All weekend he's wondering, did somebody find the kryptonite? Did somebody find my vulnerable spot? So he comes in nervously on Monday morning. He gets before Fred. "So Fred, what did you want to talk to me about?" And Fred looked up at him and said, "I forgot. It wasn't very important." And all of a sudden he began to think, why did this cause so much stress and anxiety in me? Because he realized as confident as he looked on the outside, on the inside, he had severe vulnerabilities. Or as one nationwide survey said, men are worried that people are going to find out that we portray confidence when we really feel like imposters. Or to say it my way, we all want to be Supermen, but we all know that we're Clark Kent. Well, I can relate to that too, because I've been working with my church board here for the last 8 years. I've got great friendships with all of them. I've got a great relationship with all of them. But every time I get a phone call and say, "Hey, could we get together for a meeting next Friday?" I always assume the worst. I don't assume this is a, "Way to go, Chad. Hey, the church is doing fantastic." I always assume, "Oh my goodness, what did I do? What did I get caught doing?" And we'll have that meeting on Friday, and it will be, "Oh, we just want to celebrate what God's doing. Hey, we got this issue. Let's work on it together." But there's something in me, the minute a conversation occurs, probably my idol of needing other people's acceptance, combined with this vulnerability within me that says, somebody's going to find out that I'm not everything I say I am. Which is why it's hard for us guys to share what's going on. You're asking us to share our vulnerabilities. There's a all-pro offensive tackle at the Super Bowl from the Green Bay Packers, Ken. He said this. He said, "I've never seen so many insecurities as in the locker room of football players." Why? Because on the field, guys are naked. They have to prove themselves in 2 or 3 hours. There's no fooling the camera. Once you look through the mask, you've got the most insecure guys ever. They try to put up a good front, but once they know each other really well, they'll ask, "How did I do on that play?" They're looking for affirmation. They're looking for guys' respect. It's not just the camera. It's the knowledge that some guys are going to get cut. As one player said, "We're all on the replacement list. You just have to stay off the top of the list." In sports, it's like corporate America. What have you done for me lately? It's draining, and it contains a huge fear of failure. So the mystery is, why do we seem so secure, and yet we get so defensive so quickly? The unlocked is that every man wants to be Superman, but every wife holds a lead box. So what are some keys to unlock that? And what do the Scriptures tell us about this? The Scriptures tell us that men need respect, that we are designed for respect. We are fueled by respect. We are cheered on by respect. We reach our potential when our tanks are full. And nowhere do I see that more clearly than in 2 Samuel. If you have your Bibles with you, you can open up to 2 Samuel chapter 6, verse 12. David is a leader's leader. David is a king's king. David will accomplish things that no one before him has ever accomplished. David will find a way to bring the capital city of God's people to a town that will eventually be named after him, the city of David. He will bring the Ark of the Covenant finally into a place of worship. He will reunite the people in a way it's never happened before. This guy is feeling like Superman. He has done what no one has done militarily. He's done what no one has done spiritually. And he is coming home to bless his household. The text tells us the motivation of his heart is to bless his household. He so wants to bless his wife. He so wants to bless his family. And here's what happens. It says in the text, David went and brought up the ark of God to the city of David. Now I got to tell you as a guide, the idea of having a city named after me, already I can feel that Superman well up within me. Yeah! With gladness, he brought it up. And he brings people together and he sacrifices the oxen and the fatted sheep. And David danced before the Lord with all his might. And David was wearing a linen ephod. And David and all the house of Israel brought up the ark of the Lord with shouting and the sound of the trumpet. So the whole town is cheering for Superman. The whole town is like, way to go! You're the man! You did it! Woo! But he hasn't seen his wife yet. But he can just imagine that she is going to say, I'm so proud of you, honey. You have done things that no man has ever done. You have accomplished things that we've prayed about and longed for years. He doesn't know what's in the lead box because Superman can't see through lead. He doesn't know what she'll say, but he knows what he's hoping for. He's hoping to be cheered on. He's hoping to be affirmed. He knows that what's in her mouth, what's in that lead box, is actually more valuable to him than all the cheers of all the people, of all the crowds. That's how much power she has. And he figures if they're cheering this much, what might my wife say? You can imagine he's thinking about what it's going to feel like to be affirmed by the woman he loves. He can imagine what it's going to feel like when she says the very words that everybody else has been saying, but it's going to mean more because she's got the lead box. And verse 16, and now as the ark of the Lord came into the city of David, Michal, Saul's daughter, looked through a window, and she saw King David leaping and whirling before the Lord. And in that moment, she despised him in her heart. Oh. But David doesn't know that. He doesn't know what's inside the lead box. David finished offering burnt offerings and peace offerings. He blessed the people in the Lord of hosts. Then he distributed among all the people. And here he is giving away. He's so fired up what God's done to him. He's being generous to everybody. Peace offerings. He blessed the people in the name of the Lord. He distributed among all the people, among the whole multitude of Israel, both the women and the men, to everyone a piece of loaf. Let's experience a little piece of what God's done. And so all the people departed, everyone to their house. The party's over. The crowds are gone. The cheering section's over. In verse 20, then David returned to bless his household. He already blessed the nation. He'd already blessed those with food. But now what's in his heart is not to embarrass his wife. What's in his heart is not to create insecurity in his wife. What's in his heart is not to manipulate his wife. What's in his heart, the text tells us, is he wants to come home and bless the woman he loves. So as he walks through the door, ready to bless her, ready to cheer her on, ready to share his dreams and hopes and victories of the day. And Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet David and said, how glorious was the king of Israel today, uncovering himself today in the eyes of the maids of the servants, as one of the base fellows shamelessly uncovers himself. Oh, he didn't see that coming. Of all the things he imagined might come out of her mouth, this was the last. You could actually hear the tone, even in the English. How glorious, and you can dripping with sarcasm, was the king of Israel today, uncovering himself in the eyes of the maids of his servants. What motivates her? Maybe she's insecure. Maybe by taking out his outer garment, it was culturally inappropriate. And maybe she grew up in a family where dancing was weird, and certainly dancing before the Lord. Maybe she was insecure because she saw other women looking at her husband. Who knows what's motivating her? There's probably legitimate reasons. We could probably say, hey, I might have felt that way too. But where's the disconnect? That wasn't his motivation. He came home to bless his wife. He came home to love his wife, to share his joy with his wife. But whatever her reason, insecurity, anger, whatever it was, the lead box opened, and out came the kryptonite of critique, and she hung it around his neck. And he falls to his knees, and he's crushed. He's obliterated. That one comment and that one line from his wife on a scale weighed far more than all the cheers of all the nation, of all the people. And he's crushed. And he's destroyed. And that's how much power God has entrusted to wives. You have that much power. You have that much potential to impact a man. Because what's in that lead box is so powerful. And here's the thing about men, it's so weird and so counterintuitive. Men rise up to respect, and they give up to critique. And if you say, well, I want my husband to be a leader, I want my husband to step it up, then what's so weird is the way to do it is if you affirm a man or respect a man for something greater than he's really valuable, he knows it. He knows he's not living up to that, and he will rise to the challenge. When you speak words of affirmation into his life and respect into his heart, he will rise up to that because he knows he's not worthy of it. But if you tell him what he's not worthy of, if you expose his vulnerabilities, he'll give up. You're right. He'll give up. And it's hard to articulate how powerful the words of respect are to a man's heart. It's hard to articulate. I mean, as we were getting ready for this video shooting this morning, everybody was talking, and for the most part, I didn't hear anybody's words, just mumbling. People were talking. And I heard somebody say, as they were setting up over here, I trust you to make the decision. Those words grabbed my attention. Everybody was talking, but that phrase, I trust you to make the decision. My antennas were tuned. Those are words of respect. Oh, I'd love to hear that more often. And often men hear that in the workplace, but they don't hear it at home. I trust you to make the decision. In fact, there was a nationwide survey done and said, how often do you feel in your home life, how often do you feel like I'm not appreciated or respected around here? 52% of men said, frequently I don't feel respected. 25%, no, rarely do I feel that way. And 23%, no, I generally feel respected. But over 50% of us as men, we are drawn toward environments where we're respected. And so we find ourselves drawn toward the workplace, or drawn toward sports, or drawn to hobbies where we're respected. And we pull away from environments where we're disrespected. Now, there's always good reasons. Probably he shouldn't have taken his outer garment off. There's always reasons why you say, you don't know my husband. Here's all the reasons he's not respectable. Well, you can bring all those up and he'll just give up. Or you can find the few things that you can respect and speak into his life, and he'll rise to the occasion. But here's how painful it is. Imagine if your husband turned to you and said, hey, honey, I bought you a Bowflex to work out because I see you're gaining some weight. And you're not quite as sexy as you used to be, and you're not quite as thin as you used to be, and I'm trying to help you out. So if you could just go on a diet, and if you could start working out, I think it would be beneficial to all of us. Oh, that's like pouring acid onto your heart. That is so horrible. That's so insensitive. And you turn to the husband, you bonehead, why did you say that? And he'd say, well, she's been gaining some pounds, and he gives you some facts. And the facts might be accurate, they might not. But the facts, the data, that doesn't change the pain. Well, the same thing is true of a man. When a man feels the tone and the sarcasm and the disrespect from his wife, you might have reasons. Well, this is true. He didn't do this, and he didn't do that, and he's not doing this. You can have all the reasons, and they could be valid, and they could be good. But it still feels like acid on a husband's heart. It still crushes him. It's like kryptonite, throwing it around his neck and pushing him into the pool. So what are the two keys? Number one, don't tear him down, not privately and not publicly, but especially not publicly. And number two, respect is everything. Respect is everything. One marriage counselor said this, respect is everything. When a man is affirmed, he will conquer the world. When he is not, he is sapped of his confidence and even his feeling of manhood. And believe me, he will consciously or unconsciously seek out places where he receives respect and affirmation. You know, I don't know any men who want to have an affair. I don't know any man who doesn't want to have a great marriage. But just as women can't figure out men and why they can't be loving, so too men often can't figure out, why can't she trust me? Why can't she believe in me? Why can I easily earn the affirmation of everyone else in my life, but not hers? It comes down to three things. There's a mystery. He looks like Superman, but that doesn't mean he needs to be torn down. It means he's cheered on. We need to unlock the mystery. And that mystery is this. Every man wants to be Superman, but every wife holds a lead box. But these keys only work if you use them. And the two keys are this. Don't tear them down publicly. And number two, respect is everything. Let's pray. Father, we ask that you will give us the marriages that we could have, not the ones we think we should have. God, I confess far too often my motivation in loving my wife and interacting with my wife is fear. It's control. It's trying to fix her so I feel better about myself, rather than loving her and accepting her the way she is. And God, for each of us here, we ask that you will give us new tools in our toolbox. God, that we will respect, that we will affirm, because you did the same thing to us. You loved us when we were unlovable. You affirmed us when we weren't worthy of affirmation. You gave us the respect and opportunity to be your child when we were not worthy of it. We fell so short. And we ask this all in your name. Amen.